Super Smash Bros. Brawl is one of the most controversial games in the series, but something that is almost universally liked about it is the unforgettable story mode Subspace Emissary. In something that the series had never seen before, the story mode of the game actually had a story. In previous Smash entries, there was a very basic single-player mode with elements of a narrative, but nothing on this scale. This mode would be a hybrid of the typical fighting gameplay of Smash and a side-scroller platforming game. On top of this, Nintendo made an hour's worth of cutscenes to accompany the gameplay, so clearly they invested a lot into making it memorable. Over the years, a large majority of Brawl has been forgotten due to the sheer popularity of other entries like Melee and Ultimate. But one thing people never forgot is the story mode. So today, I'll be going through the entire story mode and finding out if Subspace Emissary was actually good. The story begins in a flying stadium where Mario and Kirby are competing in a friendly match, Super Smash Bros. Style, with Princess Peach and Princess Zelda cheering them on from the stands. After the fight, the loser turns into a trophy, showing us what happens when a fighter is defeated in this world. Of course, since this is a friendly match, the winner turns them back and they shake hands. Suddenly, Meta Knight's ship, the Halberd, flies over the stadium and drops these creatures into it. With the help of the princesses, the fighters defeat them all until the Ancient Minister, a mysterious robed figure, descends with Robs carrying a bomb. The timer for the bomb is set off, and Mario is blasted into the sky, and Petey Piranha appears to capture the girls. Kirby manages to defeat him and save one of the princesses, but as for the other one, Wario enters the arena with a huge dark cannon, turning the other princess into a statue and running off. At this point, the bomb is about to explode and Kirby flies off with either Peach or Zelda, ending the prologue. In the next level, we see the perspective of Pit, who has been watching the chaos unfold from Skyworld. The goddess Palutena appears, granting him a magical bow which gives him the strength to help in the fight against this strange new enemy. This begins the first real level of the game, where we get to platform and fight enemies. Things don't seem so difficult in this stage due to Pit's strong recovery moves and multi-hit attacks, but trust me, things won't be easy forever. After this first segment, Pit finds Mario's trophy and frees him. With a nod of approval, the two set off for the rest of the level. At the end, a cutscene plays of the Halberd flying away, being chased by a much smaller ship. In the next level, we go back to Kirby's perspective, where he and the princess have arrived on the Halberd. Unfortunately for them, they get caught in the crossfire of that smaller ship we saw earlier, and they get knocked down into a sea of clouds. This is the next level of the game, and it shows them reaching the ground at the end. The next group of the game we're introduced to is Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong. These two are protecting their banana hoard until it gets stolen by Bowser's minions. After making it through this level and to their banana hoard, Bowser arrives with a dark cannon. He attempts to capture Diddy, but Donkey Kong pushes Diddy out the way, or I should say punches Diddy out the way, and is turned into a trophy. Back to Pit and Mario, the two have made it to the ground and go through a plains region. They manage to catch up to the Ancient Minister, but sadly not fast enough to stop it from moving a bomb to a new location. Next, we find Diddy making his way through the forest after getting knocked away. Unfortunately for him, he stumbles upon the legendary Pokemon Rayquaza. Luckily, Fox had just crash landed in the same area and helps defeat Rayquaza with him. Afterwards, Fox tries to move on, but Diddy forces him to help save Donkey Kong. Continuing with this duo, we get another full level accompanied by some phenomenal music. At the end, the two fight a dark version of Bowser. However, this ends up not being the real him, and he appears with the dark cannon once again. Despite Diddy's desire to save Donkey, Fox doesn't let him and they run away. Next, we see the point of view of Lucas, who for some reason is walking alone in an abandoned zoo. A bunch of enemies attack from out of nowhere, along with a walking statue. Lucas runs away but trips on a branch, and at the last moment, Ness shows up and breaks the statue, revealing Porky inside. The Mother Boys unite to defeat him, but they can't seem to catch a break when Wario shows up with his cannon and starts spamming at Ness. He changed his aim to Lucas instead, prompting Ness to step in front of the blast, sacrificing himself. Lucas runs away only to continue his sad walk in the park. Pokemon Trainer is here though and uses his Squirtle to take out some stray enemies and make it through another level. Despite Pokemon Trainer going out to do his own thing, Lucas decides to keep traveling with him in hopes he can maybe save Ness. In the next stage, we get another instance of a bomb being detonated, this time with Marth looking on. Witnessing the massive explosion, he suddenly clashes blades with Meta Knight. Although they think they are enemies at first, they end up teaming up to fight back against this army. The two unsuccessfully try to catch up to the Ancient Minister, however Ike shows up and cuts off the bomb it was carrying, and after another level with these three, they continue their pursuit. We then cut away to Luigi, who is transformed into a trophy by King Dedede. Wario shows up with Ness and the princess and sees Luigi's statue all alone. That is, until the Waddle Dees attack him and steal all of the fighters. The next level introduces us to Link, who stumbles upon the Master Sword and pulls it from its stone. deeper in the forest, he finds Yoshi when they are attacked by these subspace army guys. The two end up traveling together and decide to chase after the halberd that just passed them. We also get a very brief teaser of a character yet to come. The next character we see is Zero Suit Samus, who is exploring some sort of research facility. She stumbles upon a Pikachu getting tortured, and she frees it, and then they fight against the enemies in the facility. Once again, I gotta say, this music is outstanding. At the end of the level, Samus finds the whereabouts of her suit. Now we can finally get an update on what's been going on with Kirby and the other princess. Well, clearly nothing good, since Kirby completely ignores her and lets Bowser show up and turn her into a statue, and then into an evil clone of herself. At this point in the game, things get a little weird with the characters, since it all depends on which princess you decided to save in the first mission. But anyway, someone shows up and you fight the dark version of the princess. When they win, the pair of either Mario and Pit or Yoshi and Link arrive and they do battle. Afterwards, DDD shows up and tries to steal the losers of the fight, but Kirby comes back and doesn't let that happen. Finally, we get our first big crossover level. The group chases down DDD and finds out that he went through some huge cave. The next cutscene is very interesting and shows Bowser taking orders from Ganondorf, revealing that perhaps the man behind all this chaos might be the Dark Wizard himself. We go back to Lucas and Pokemon Trainer, who are on the hunt for a Charizard that just flew by. After a level, they encounter Wario, and Lucas is finally not scared of him. Despite winning the fight, they realize Ness isn't with Wario, so they aim to continue chasing the Charizard. The next cutscene shows DDD with his 3 fighters, and he places a strange badge on all of them. Bowser shows up and wrecks the place though, stealing the princess trophy. The big crossover group shows up to the rubble a bit late though and chases after him. Eventually, the group catches up to Bowser, but he makes it out using his clown car. The next scene shows another bomb being detonated, then we see Ganondorf speaking with Master Hand. We then get another stage with Lucas and Pokemon Trainer, and a bit through, Pokemon Trainer catches himself an Ivysaur, and at the end, there's a boss fight with Charizard, which gets him the full team he was trying to build. The next stage is the Fire Emblem boys and Meta Knight chasing after a mysterious vehicle. This thing ends up being a boss, but it escapes and falls into a strange hole. This pit it just fell through turns out to be exactly where Pokemon Trainer and Lucas are, so they fight the enemy too. Turns out the thing ended up being a hidden bomb, and just as they're about to be taken out with it, Lucas breaks off the arm, and then Meta Knight swoops in, getting our second big group together. As for the Mario group, they've finally caught up to the Ancient Minister and pursue him. Once again though, the Robs gather to detonate a bomb, and the group is unable to stop it from exploding. At this point though, it's been a while since we've seen what Fox and Diddy are doing, so the next level involves them. As they're walking, Diddy gets sniped by Bowser, who turns him into Dark Diddy. Fox isn't alone though, as Falco drops in as backup. They scare off Bowser and turn Diddy back, however the dark version is still here and that's a boss fight. After the fight, Falco tries to run off much like Fox tried to do, but Diddy doesn't let him. At the end of the level, the group finds Donkey Kong being sent off to some faraway floating island, which is where the research facility is. Pikachu and Samus continue their journey here and reach the room where Samus's suit is being held. After fighting off some Dark Samus clones, she finally puts on the suit and the pair escape the lab once they defeat Ridley. On the outside, they discover those subspace bombs being shipped out of another underground lab. We then get another character introduction as Olimar is trying to fight a massive Rob unit unsuccessfully. Captain Falcon shows up and destroys it, but not without killing Olimar's entire army by accident. The two end up finding the Diddy group, saving Donkey Kong, and they all team up, but the Star Fox boys go on to do other things. Next, we see the Halberd in combat with another ship, so Meta Knight decides to figure out what's going on. The Ice Climbers are also here too, I guess. At the top of the mountain they were climbing, they find Lucario aura farming and decides to square up to Meta Knight. Regardless, Meta Knight and Lucario board the ship, but everyone else in his group stays behind to fight an army of enemies. Mario's group also shows up here and decides to help. Then we get the most random reveal of a Smash character ever, and Snake appears on the Halberd out of a box. After a bit, Snake meets with Meta Knight and Lucario and they work together. Deep within the Halberd, they find the two princess trophies turned into dark versions of themselves. Defeating them sets the girls free after all this time. Despite being told to wait, Zelda decides to turn into Sheik and escape, much to Peach's enjoyment. At the end of the level, Fox arrives to fight against the ship, but since he's also shooting at the girls, Sheik jumps up and pulls him out of the ship. Right as they're about to fight, Peach decides to settle things with tea, which she somehow brewed on the deck of a speeding battle airship. Right after, Snake and the boys stumble upon the captains of the ship, the Mr. Game & Watches, although these end up being fakes and turn into a big robot thing. Defeating it reveals the real Mr. Game & Watch, who Peach tames with her umbrella. We then see Samus and Pikachu invading the subspace bomb factory, ultimately until they reach the location of the Ancient Minister and the army of Robs. While this is happening, the Donkey Kong gang also is invading the factory. The two groups arrive at the same time and witness Ganondorf commanding the Robs to detonate all of the bombs. The Ancient Minister actually tries to stop them, but is is attacked by the Robs. Suddenly, its disguise burns away and reveals that the ancient minister is actually the original Rob who is tired of being forced to sacrifice his own companions. Despite its efforts to stop the bombs from being detonated, once the Robs have connected to it, it's already too late. So the gang escapes the factory on Captain Falcon's ship. However, Meta Ridley appears and gives them one last challenge before leaving. The subspace explosion this time around is massive and engulfs the entire floating island, and essentially every fighter available finally groups up. Emerging out of the massive subspace area is a huge gunship with the capability of shooting out subspace at will. This ship is manned by Bowser and Ganondorf, and they unleash fire on the approaching halberd. It gets destroyed, but it was only acting as a vessel for the other fighter ships who emerge to attack it. With the help of Kirby, they destroy the ship emerging out of the subspace, and everyone enters the void. With everyone gathered together, they prepare for the ultimate battle. On the other side of things, Ganondorf betrays Bowser and turns him into a trophy. He then reports to Master Hand, although it is revealed that the hand is not even acting on its own will and is being controlled by a being called Taboo. This being is so powerful that when they arrive to fight Taboo, he turns every single fighter into a trophy with one blow. Afterwards, he creates spheres of various different locations in the world and hides himself within them. It seems that all hope is lost, however there is one fighter who had a contingency plan for this, King DDD. Although it seemed that DDD was acting as a villain collecting fighters for his collection, it's clear that he was informed of Taboo's master plan, so he created these badges that were timed to automatically turn back the trophies they were placed on. This is why he originally had one placed on himself. Although they have a small group, DDD, Ness, and Luigi are the world's last hope. They enter subspace, slowly gathering the heroes who have been seemingly scattered across it. The group reaches Taboo, and they decide to free Bowser, who is unfortunately not cooperating so easily. But after beating him, he chills out and sees who the real enemy is. Around the same time, Kirby actually awakens from his trophy since he decided to eat one of the DDD badges he found on the way here. He makes his way to the group, and they decide to form a team with all of the heroes and villains that are available. And so begins the craziest part of the entire adventure. This is the Great Maze, a gauntlet of all of the challenges and levels we've seen throughout Subspace Emissary. This place leaves no stone unturned, with you having to fight every major boss, go through all of the different level types, and even fight all of the dark versions of fighters. Also, this is an actual maze. The progression is not linear, and it is possible to get lost. Fortunately, you do get access to a map and multiple resting points along the way. The Great Maze alone takes around an hour to get through until you reach the end. Eventually, the group reaches Taboo once again, but unlike last time, he isn't able to get off his big blast. Out of nowhere, Sonic the Hedgehog appears and shatters his wings, beginning the final boss fight. After Taboo is beaten, all instances of subspace bombs have been reversed and the credits roll. If I'm being honest, going through the story again, it's not as crazy as I remember. I mean, the last time I really went through the Subspace Emissary was probably over a decade ago, and realistically, there was a lot of nostalgia built up for it. So here's what I'll do. I'll talk about the gameplay, the story, and then my complete thoughts on it. First of all, the platforming style they went for here is very controversial, and rightfully so. Platforming games are pretty dang hard to make right on their own, so building perfect levels with the knowledge that a bunch of different fighters have to go through them is essentially impossible. For that reason, I'll definitely say that the level design is pretty meh throughout the game. Sure, there are good parts, but realistically I can't expect Donkey Kong levels of design here. I will say the awesome music really does help out with the atmosphere of the stages, especially the Donkey Kong inspired tracks. The enemies in these levels are definitely another interesting part. While it is super awesome that they designed brand new enemies just for the campaign, a lot of them just feel annoying. Like they don't really feel like enemies, but just deterrences from the main objective, which really is to just make it to the cutscenes at the end of the levels. I know it's good to frame these cutscenes like rewards, but it would be nice to also have the levels be a little bit more engaging. Now let's talk about the story. As you can tell, the cutscenes are one and probably the only factor developing the story. Additionally, these are basically silent films, as there is little to no dialogue in any scenes here. All of the interactions are implied rather than explicitly said. It's not as if the characters don't speak, rather we just don't get to hear them. I actually don't hate this style at all, and while it would be nice to see the characters actually talking with each other, they did a great job of keeping the story's themes and facial expressions at priority. The writing of the story is kind of impossible to talk about without discussing the overall setting the world takes place in. As you've probably noticed, the continuity of these characters' stories doesn't really add up. Everyone is all over the place, and it probably seems like prior stories characters have been through doesn't matter. The reason for this calls back to the idea that Super Smash Bros. Takes place in the mind of a child. Characters like Master Hand represent the hand of a child, which we know to be true based on the previous two titles. Naturally, this explains all of the ridiculous what-if scenarios that happen. I remember being a child myself and having different Nintendo plushes interact with each other, playing out storylines that would logically not make much sense. influence. After all, a child doesn't know how to write a good story with continuity. I don't want to just write off this concept though, because Subspace Emissary's entire message dives deep into it. First, let's talk about the main villain, Taboo. This guy is brought into things late into the story, but he had been controlling everything the whole time. While he initially seemed like some random original villain they made for Smash, I think what he truly represents is some external force influencing a child to grow up and abandon their toys. Look at the subspace bombings, for example. One by one, Taboo orders the destruction of various regions of the world. Along the way, he has fighters be turned into trophies and collected. What does this sound like to me? It sounds like a parent starting to sell or put away their child's toys as they grow up. The fighters turning into trophies shows how easily life can be taken away from toys. Children view their toys in the same way they might view friends, but their parents just don't see it that way. These external forces command the destruction of their imaginary worlds with no way for the child to resist. This is why the ROBs cannot be unplugged from the bombs once it starts. A lot of people like to theorize that Taboo represents one single person in this child's life. However, I don't think that's what he's supposed to be exclusively. Taboo represents more of the concept of external influence. To help you understand this, I'll give you a personal story. When I was a child, I would create worlds and storylines for my toys. Fortunately, my parents always encouraged me in these scenarios and never took my toys away forcefully or without asking. Then something happened. Around the age of 12, I moved to an area that was a bit rougher than anywhere I'd lived before. For the first time in my life, I'd experienced true hate and judgment from the world. Suddenly, my biggest worry shifted from the issues in the fictional worlds of my imagination and instead to preserve my social status and avoid the things that were socially taboo. In the game, Taboo himself never leaves subspace, which I feel shows how people who have lost their childlike innocence usually drag down others with them. Parents who have become slaves to the grind unintentionally influence their children to follow in their footsteps and give up on their dreams. Of course, as you can see from my channel, I grew out of this mindset. But how is that possible? If you ever wondered why Sonic's inclusion in Subspace Emissary came so late and out of nowhere, it's not because of bad writing. Sonic's inclusion shows how something so random and out of nowhere can break you out of the prison taboos keep our inner child held in. Have you ever had something that you haven't particularly cared about in a while, maybe it's a game or something, come out with something that just sparks your interest again? I personally really like sports, and I stopped watching the NBA for a few years, but then a new player emerged to unexplainably reawaken that inner child again. You suddenly have a burning desire and curiosity for the things you once let go because of this new addition. I mean, think about Fortnite. Look how many players came back to it when they brought Fortnite OG back into play. Having something nostalgic or something new that reminds you of those good times is the key to defeating taboos. At the end of the game, if the fighters had faced Taboo again, he would have just turned them all to trophies like last time. Sonic's appearance weakens the power Taboo had. In the real world, we should look at Subspace Emissary as a cautionary tale, perhaps for ourselves or even our children. If you let the outside world control you, it will leave scars. However, these scars don't mean you could never return to your childhood. All you need is a little motivation. It doesn't even have to be that crazy, but you can reclaim the individuality and imagination you once had, even if you've lost it completely. Because realistically, that inner child never leaves us. Hence, me making videos about games from over a decade ago. In all seriousness, I think Subspace Emissary is the definition of a memorable story. It's not necessarily peak fiction by any means, but it leaves players with the exact message it wants to get across. That excitement that revives our inner child is given to us when we play through the story with friends. The gameplay doesn't have to be amazing when the people we're playing the game with are. So is Subspace Emissary actually good? Yes, but not for the reasons you would probably think. I hope this video inspired you to do some introspection about how you allow the outside world to influence you. Personally, taking a step back into my childhood and accomplishing my dream of becoming a YouTuber has changed my life forever. Speaking of which, I'm trying to hit 10,000 subs this year, but almost 99% of my viewers aren't even subscribed, so I'd love for you to help me improve that number. I also have a Patreon in the top link of the description if you want to support the channel. Thanks for watching.